Let's look at this. Donald Trump says Sadiq Khan was elected thanks to migrant inflows, branding him a horrible mayor who's made London a different place. He called him a disaster with the wrong ideology. So what do Americans think of us Brits and, quite frankly, the rest of Europe when the president says things like this? Of course, it's not the first time he's gone overboard in this respect. Greg Swenson is the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. Greg, always good to talk. How are you, sir?
Great to see you, Ian.
And nice to have you on again. I mean, he does seem to have a thing for Sadiq Khan, doesn't he? And I mean, there is an argument. The only thing that annoys me is when he says it, is that he's also acknowledging his existence. So I kind of squirm a bit. I think, you know, there might be a little bit of it that makes Khan go, hey, this is great. I've got the president of the... No president of the United States has ever referenced the mayor of anywhere in this country. And here is Sadiq Khan, some say living rent-free in Donald Trump's head.
Yeah, and I think that the president has a couple of characters like that. I think before the big, kiss and make up love fest in the White House, he had the same kind of spat going with Mamdani in New York, the incoming mayor. So, you know, he punches back. That's the interesting thing and unusual thing about this president. And that's one of the reasons he was elected 2 or 3 times. So, he punches back. He's not going to take any garbage. And that whole scene in 2018 when he came to London and Sadiq, had the balloon, or he at least permitted the balloon to go up. And, the president, as I said, he takes things personally, but he also punches back. So he's not afraid to do that.
I thought that balloon thing was, I thought it was a disaster. I thought it was, for want of a better phrase, I thought it was just impolite, to be honest, Greg.
Yeah,
it was just a very curious thing for a mayor to say, yeah, it's a great idea.
And by the way, he's right about Sadiq Khan, so it's
well, yes,
like
I mean, when he talks about him being... Yeah, he's a disaster. I don't know why how anybody could possibly form an argument against that analysis, frankly.
Yeah, that's right. And I think normally in polite society or in normal traditional diplomatic circles, a president wouldn't say that even if he thought it. But this president's really candid. He's really transparent. He says what everyone's thinking. And that people won't say in polite society, but it's just true. So good for him.
Yeah. And of course, part of the deal of being a senior politician, I would include the office of Mayor of London as a senior position, is that in this respect, you're not partisan. I mean, you are, are we seriously saying that mayors will only be kind and polite to people whose politics they support? I mean, that would be ridiculous.
Right. I mean, I think Sadiq Khan should be much more diplomatic, frankly. And look, he gets it. He's in a way started this fight with President Trump. But I do also think that he didn't just disagree with the president. He called him a fascist. He called him a racist, and all the other list of idiocy that the people frequently on the left make up about the president. So, it's not a surprise.
Indeed. And of course, it's not just about, Trump is not having a pop because it's somebody of the left. I mean, he meets Keir Starmer on a fairly regular basis. And, they disagree fundamentally on pretty much everything, I would imagine. But they seem to more or less get on okay.
Absolutely. And he just met with Mamdani in the White House a few weeks ago. So, look, the president will talk to anybody, and he wants to be diplomatic. He wants to get things done. He's got the voters or the people in mind. And so if he has to ruffle a few feathers, fine. If he has to meet with people that people don't like, he'll do that too. Just to, he's got what's in the best interest of the people in mind.
Yeah. Another story I wanted to run past you, Greg, while you're with us. All tourists, including those from Britain, will have to undergo social media screening before being allowed entry into the United States. This is under plans being considered by Border Force in the US. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just another layer of bureaucracy. So by nature, I don't like it. However, if it keeps illegal migrant criminals out of the country, or even legally migrant, if you're trying to get into the country on a visa and you have, a really storied record, or you're an extreme and a threat of violence or an extremist on social media, I don't know. That's going to be hard to police, Ian. I kind of agree with it in terms of the outcome. If that means there are going to be fewer people killing Americans in the country, I'm all for it. However, I think, it's a slippery slope. And next thing you know, they're going to be doing the same thing on citizens. And I think with this whole threat to free speech that we're seeing in Europe and here in the UK, as well as we saw in the United States 4 years ago. I'm really averse to anything that starts, looking at social media or
Yeah,
people's
and also,
personal history.
correct. People write all sorts of trash on social media. They don't always mean it.
Yeah,
But there
that's
are
right.
reports that this has already happened. There's one French scientist who apparently was turned away at the border after messages that reflect hatred towards Mr. Trump and can be described as terrorism, so that were found on his phone. So, I mean,
Yeah,
that's almost kangaroo court territory, isn't it? Some border force guy goes, that's very anti-Trump. Sounds very mean.
Yeah, I think I want to make sure that the right to say mean things about people is preserved, right? And so I think everybody's got a little scar tissue because of Charlie Kirk and the assassination attempt on the president, because both of those assassins had really kind of weird social media history, and they were already on the FBI radar. But that, I don't think that's a reason to start social media policing everybody that's coming in. By the way, coming in legally and going through the right process, getting a visitor's visa or whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely. Greg, great to have you on. Thank you as ever. Greg Swenson, he is the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. Thank you to him. That is, I mean, these are reports that tourists, including those from Britain, will have to undergo a social media screening before allowed entry into the United States. I mean, if that was to manifest itself, that would put Trump's America among the top, almost at the top of the league of anti-free speech, which is kind of curious because one of the criticisms he makes, and Elon Musk and people like that, who has a sort of love-hate relationship now with Donald Trump, is that the UK is the sort of famous anti-speech place because of stuff you say on social media. Should be able to say anything on social media. Well, yeah, you might, but then you might not be able to get into the country that actually owns most of social media. So that would be extraordinary. We do have to live in a different world now, though, and I think this is reasonable in terms of what you can say on social media. I think people have run away with the idea that you should be able to say anything. And I kind of, like 99% of me, agrees with that. But of course, we know you can't libel someone. You can't threaten to kill someone. You can't start a riot on social media, no more than you would start a riot by putting posters up or delivering leaflets. That would already be. So if you get into that kind of territory. And the Joey Barton case, I thought was probably fascinating and really compromise some of what I thought. The two football pundits, can't quite get my head around that. Jeremy Vine, who was called, quote, a bike nonce by Joey Barton. But it actually wasn't just that. There was a bit more than that. So where do you go? And nobody saw that and thought, oh, that means, in this context, paedophile. Nobody thought that. Everyone thought, oh, it's a bike nonce. Like, I'm trying to think of another comparison where you are addicted to a certain way of life. Jeremy Vine likes riding a bike. He used to take a lot of videos of his bike rides and cars doing bad things to bikes or vice versa, whatever. But he didn't just say that. He said so much more than that. And then, of course, it's not what the individual has said, it's then the pylon of what individuals have said. They start saying, well, we should go around his house and don't let him near primary schools or anything like that. And, making comparisons with Rolf Harris and goodness knows who else. It starts to get where there's a pylon. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people here, not just, a few characters, hundreds of thousands of people piling on to the same thing. At what point do you say that is surely that's a criminal offence? That has to be a criminal offence when you get to that stage where what you are saying has gone beyond free speech and you are essentially encouraging almost an amphitheatre of bullying of one person. And that is the world we're in now. So do you have to be careful? Should you be careful? In an ideal world, no, because we'd all be responsible. But unfortunately, we don't live in an ideal world, and that's why Joey Barton ended up in court. I mean, the Fred and Rose West stuff, not sure about that. There is such a thing as dark satire.